You're looking at getting a new SSD, but you don't know exactly what to look for. Let's take a look and see what we can figure out about SSDs. There's lots of things to look at when you're looking for your brand new SSD, such as the price, the performance, the reliability, aesthetics, but you're never going to find a perfect combination of these. The speed is one thing you're going to notice about your SSD more than anything else when using your computer. Now, for your typical OS and games and programs, you're not going to notice a 5% difference in speed. So a lot of it's negligible. It really comes down to what kind of form factor and connection type that you're looking to get is really going to determine the speed of the SSD. Most SATA ones are so close together that I just call it a wash. There's M.2 PCIe SSDs like the Intel 750 series, and there is some differences in speed. You won't always notice it in day-to-day tasks. So we always want our SSDs and anything to last for as long as possible. So it's good to take a look at the warranty, which gives an idea of the reliability of the drive. For example, Samsung has where you can write 50 gigabytes a day for 5 years on their 840 EVO series. This gives us an idea of exactly how much we can expect the SSD to last for in terabytes written. This is especially beneficial because we always want to know when we're getting close to that point to know when to replace our SSD. Although, chances are if you're just using it for an OS drive, you typically won't meet that amount per day, and it will take you much longer, and you're most likely going to replace the SSD because it's either too small, it's too slow, or you just want something bigger and better in your system before that drive fails. Your case and your motherboard are going to affect your form factor decision, which kind of relates a bit to the speed. So you're going to take in and have to look at which form factor is going to be best for you. The most common being the 2.5 inch SSD in either the 7mm or 9mm variants. Now, this usually connects to the SATA 3 connection, and it's pretty fast. You're going to get about 500 to 550 megabytes per second transfer speeds. So what if your drive bays are filled up with hard drives or other SSDs? Well, you might be considering going with an M.2, although your motherboard has to support this connection type. There's M.2 SATA SSDs and M.2 PCIe SSDs. Same goes for the connector. Now, you can put a SATA SSD into a PCI connection slot, but you can't take and get the full power out of a PCI SSD by putting it in an M.2 SATA slot. This is something to watch out for when you're wanting a really fast drive on your motherboard. If you're wondering what M.2 is, take and hit that little eye up in the corner, and that'll take you over to a Tech Quickie video explaining what M.2 is. So now we know what 2.5 inch and M.2 is. What about the PCIe SSDs in the adding card form? Well, they typically go into a 4x slot, so it can go from anything from a 4x and 8x or a 16x slot, and it will give you pretty good speeds, typically around the 1 gigabyte per second, although there are some that are significantly faster than that, such as the Intel 750 series SSDs, although they run on the NVMe protocol. So looking at price, you're definitely going to notice a price difference between the 2.5 inch SATA SSDs and something like the Intel 750 series. It's usually measured in price per gigabyte, and generally if you stay under around 40 cents US per gigabyte, you're typically pretty good for the 2.5 inch SATA SSDs. Now, when you get into PCIe adding cards, it can get extremely expensive, extremely fast, upwards of around $2 per gigabyte. SSD prices have came down significantly in the past 18 months. They pretty much cut themselves in half, and you can expect to see that again in the next 18 months, as that's kind of how prices for computer parts go. About every 18 months, the price cuts in half. This doesn't mean you should wait to buy your SSD hoping for the price to come down. It's definitely worth picking up a 128 gig or 256 gig SSD for your OS, games, and programs, as you'll definitely notice the increase in performance, and it's something that I feel, and many others that have an SSD definitely feel is worth it. There's some that have tried it and don't feel it's worth it. Now, aesthetics. I'm not going to go over aesthetics too much because it'll depend on whether you actually care about them, for one. Two is whether you actually are going to be able to see your SSDs in your system. And then three, if you can actually see your SSDs, I can't tell you what one's going to match your build. And you'll be able to tell by looking at the SSD, most likely, if it's going to match your build. I hope this beginner's guide helped you if you're in the market for a new SSD. And I have more videos like this coming out in this series I'm hoping to create, coming out, and they should be out about once a week. And if you are interested, I have a guide on painting this, which is an SLI bridge, coming out on Thursday. Anyways, I'll see you in the next one. H100i and the H100i GT.